Matthias, you just mentioned you're in Croatia right now. What is it like after a couple of years of not being able to kind of perform your job the way you used to? What is it like to being back on the road, being back in different countries?
It feels actually really nice because especially as a DJ, you kind of miss or yeah, you really miss the connection to the crowd because that was I was so used to having feedback from people when I have, like, for example, a new song and you play it, you get feedback, and you can go back to the studio, do some changes. But like in the last 2 years when COVID happened, you didn't get that feedback. So it was like you produce something, but you really have to be sure, okay, this is the right song, for example. And now being back on the road is so good because at one point after 2 years or even more, you feel very disconnected to the whole thing. But on the other hand, like being back now and being able to play again, it's like riding a bicycle. You come
Right.
back very close. Like it's super nice.
Well, you mentioned something interesting because I saw a video of yourself. It was a couple of weeks ago where you talked about reaching billion streams, I think. Or
Mhm.
and this is obviously a kind of a mind-numbing number. It's kind of difficult to make sense of. But as you mentioned, that disconnect, when you see all those numbers on the screen, is that very different than being in front of actual people and being able to look them in the eye?
It's totally different because you see real emotions on stage. Like you can really see somebody's having a good time, somebody's bored, somebody's crying because it's so good, somebody's like I don't know, it's so different. I actually don't care. I don't really care about numbers. It was my management who told me like, hey, you're
Okay.
reaching 1 billion streams, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know. I had no clue how many streams I have because if you focus too much of it, you think about too much of it, and then I think it's weird for the creativity. But it's super different being on stage to compared to any numbers.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, in that same video, you also mentioned kind of starting over 10 years ago and kind of getting into this whole thing that you do now. So can you take me back to those first couple of months of you discovering what DJing, producing is, and kind of trying to figure out how you can become part of it?
Absolutely. It's I think nowadays it's a cool story for me because when I started DJing, I just started for myself. So I was just DJing because I wanted to know how can you mix songs into another song, for example. So I just did it for myself, and I was quite introvert back then. And my ex-girlfriend back in the days, she said, hey, this is so cool, you have to do something with it. And she was the only one who heard the mixes. And then she signed up for a DJ contest for me back then, like years ago. And then she told me one Friday when I came back home, she was like, hey, we are going to a club tonight and I signed up for a DJ contest for you. And we are going in around 5 hours. And I had nothing to prepare. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I was too shy. I was already shaking. I was like, okay, this is not going to work. But at the end, all my friends forced me like, hey, let's go tonight. We will support you. And at the end of the night, I won the contest. So I think that was really the starting point. And half a year later, the owner of the club back then, he called me and said, hey, can you come and play tonight for like 8 hours from 10 to 6 in the morning? Because all my resident DJs are sick. And I said, okay, I will come, but I never played more than 1 hour. So I don't know what to do. But at the end, the night was really good. Everything went well. I was super nervous, but it worked out very well. And from that night, I was there for 5 years every Saturday.
Okay.
So every Saturday for 5 years in a row, I played for 8 hours in this club. And that was the real starting point.
Yeah, then this is Club Index, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly.
Because I grew up close to the German border
oh, really?
in the Netherlands. So and I never went, but a lot of my friends on the weekends, they went to either Index or a different club in Germany. So a lot of my friends must have seen you around that time.
Probably. And it was a huge club. It's still one of the best clubs in Germany. So I was lucky because I I had the opportunity to play in one of the best clubs with no experience. So I learned everything there, but it was like the best school I could ever imagine. And that helps me on the big stages today a lot, because I learned, yeah, like I said, I learned a lot there.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you were almost like thrown into the fire because all of a sudden you had to play 8 hours and every week and stuff. So can you share just one thing that you learned that you still use today? What you learned in those kind of those initial years, maybe of producing.
When it really comes to DJing, I think the most important part is really the hardest part to learn is to read the crowd. What do they want to hear now? And that's something I use a lot these days, because I'm playing almost every day in a different country. And every crowd is different. Wherever you go, every crowd is different. And for example, I never prepare a set. When I arrive at a venue, I know exactly when I see the people, like after 2 or 3 songs of the DJ before me, I know exactly, okay, I'm gonna play this and this is gonna work. And I think if you don't have this experience for so many years, it's very difficult sometimes. And people these days, people plan and organize their sets before, but they don't react on the crowd. So I think that makes it a little special for me, or easier for me, because I know exactly, okay, I'm gonna play this now, I'm gonna play that now. So it's like spontaneous, but with the crowd together. And that's the biggest learning, because technical wise, it's easy to learn. You can learn it at home, but the real practice you get in a club.
And one thing I find interesting then is you mentioned you were kind of shy early on. So starting to release music and then kind of becoming this person that a lot of attention is focused on. What was that like for you, especially as you start to gain some notoriety? So some songs started to do well. So
it was very difficult for me in the beginning, but difficult in a positive way.
Sure.
It sounds negative, but it was just weird, because sometimes in the beginning, people stopped me on the road in my city and they were like, "Hey, are you Tujamo?" And I said, "Oh yeah." But I was like, "Oh my God, what do the people want?" But they were all very nice. But if this never happened to you before and people want to take pictures with you, it's nice. But in the beginning, it's also super weird. I mean, just imagine I was in the city years ago with my mom and somebody stopped me for a photo. And my mom looked at me and she was like, "Oh my God, what was that? What happened?" And it's not normal. It's not natural. And I really had to get used to it, but always in a very positive way. So I really like it. And now it became like a normal thing, let's say. So sure. I'm just happy when people stop me for a photo. They were always nice. And you always have those nice conversations with the fans. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, what is one of the best messages you've ever gotten from a fan?
There are so many. I mean, just imagine if somebody comes to you and tells you like, "Hey, your song is my favorite song forever since 5 years." That's something I still get goosebumps when I talk about it, because what I create in my little 20 square meter studio, like is being played all over the world. And for some people, it's their favorite song for years. That's something. I think that's a feeling. It's really difficult to describe. Sorry, but it's simply amazing. That always amazes me, and that keeps me going on and on, because I always want to give that or have that feeling again, that people are like really loving your music, and it's such a nice feeling. Yeah,
because we talked a little bit about the DJing part of it, but the producing side of it, and I suppose, but I'm not sure, but I suppose it's a little bit more personal. You put a little bit more of yourself in those songs. So
yes,
when you started releasing kind of those kind of tracks, what was your aim? What was your mindset, so to say?
So when I started producing, that was also in the Index time, what we've talked about it before. And to be honest, I was just curious, because after a while, I knew how to DJ, I knew how to read a crowd, I knew how to play in a club, and I could play for 8 hours with a full club. That was easy. But then I was curious again, like, okay, now I can mix, but now I want to know how to produce a song. how does it work? So I downloaded Fruity Loops back then. And I just started. I had nothing in my mind. I never had in my mind like, hey, I want to be a big DJ. I just did it for myself. And luckily, at one point, I thought like, okay, I can maybe try to play it in my resident sets to make it a little bit more personal. And at some point, I sent it out to some DJs, and people were like, oh my God, this is nice. This is really cool. So I never had the attention of being like super famous or something. I just did it for myself. But nowadays, when I'm producing, of course, with all the learnings I had and with all the knowledge, I think I know exactly what I can produce, what I can make technical wise, but also how it is going to be in for the crowd, for example.
Sure.
So sometimes I'm just sitting down and be like, hey, I want to do a festival song this time, or I want to do like a so-called Spotify-like song or whatever. So I always choose, like when I'm going to the studio, like today I'm going to make this. So it's,
I can imagine because of the lockdown, all of a sudden you were kind of forced to take a break in a way. So did and a couple of songs that came out of that, I Don't Want to Go, Take Control, or Lonely Taking You Home, kind of those songs in that time. Is it fair to say that those were less for the dance floor and more kind of trying to venture into other sonic landscapes as well?
Yeah, and it's absolutely true, but it's also the biggest reason for that is that when we had the lockdown, that was for like, let's say 8 years before the lockdown, I was just touring constantly, like all over the world. I took around 220 flights per year, which is insane. That means like you are flying almost every day, and in between I had to make my music. That means I have one day at home, and then I had to make music. So before COVID, I just used the day and was like, okay, I really need this kind of record now. But when COVID happened, I finally, I had the time to really go a little bit more relaxed on the musical part. So that means I could try a little bit of going that direction, a little bit of that direction. So I think that's a natural reason why I could try out a little bit more, let's say, other genres, because I always wanted to I always wanted to produce a little bit different, but I never had the time before. And I think that's the reason why the songs are also a little bit different, because I really want to try out everything.
Well, one thing about this, because I remember right before COVID, or the years before COVID, this notion of exhaustion among DJs, and as you mentioned, your schedule, just flying everywhere and just doing so much, and then the thing with Avicii happened, and Hartwell didn't want to tour anymore, and there were things going on. So this might sound strange in a way, but was it in a way good that a lot of DJs were forced to take a break in a way, to slow down a little bit?
Yeah, I must say, COVID in general was bad for everyone, but just for my little circus, just for myself and for the health of my body, it was the best thing what could happen, because without COVID, I would never have taken a break, because of course you are in this roller coaster and it goes on and on and on the whole time. I mean, you have a management, you have an agency, they're like, let's say, pushing you to keep that roller coaster going. But naturally, it was, like I said, for the whole world and for everything else, for the health, it was very bad that it happened. But just for myself, I mean, I was finally able to find my sleep rhythm back, because that was totally destroyed before. And I was having time for a real hobby, which I never had before. So it was really good. And I spoke to a lot of DJs now, and they all said, hey, like money-wise and for the health, for a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people died. It was really bad. But just for us to take a little break, it was really good.
You mentioned a hobby. Sorry, you mentioned a hobby. What did you start doing?
Sorry, what did I
mention?
You
mentioned a hobby. You had time for a normal hobby. What was one
hobby,
thing? What was what you did?
yeah, since I had a lot of time, I was with my girlfriend, and we just discovered where I'm living. Like we went to a forest, for example, and we were
Okay.
just walking around. We bought bicycles, so we were driving around the whole time. And it sounds weird because I think going to a forest and driving a bicycle is very normal for people, and there must be like, hey, what's so special with it? But just imagine if you're constantly in a roller coaster, it's something special, or it becomes special for me. You know, I was with a friend, for example, one day in a forest with a bicycle, and I told him like, hey, let's stop, let's look at this. This is amazing. And he was like, hey, come on, it's a fucking forest. What's so special? And I said, I haven't been here for 10 years. It was mind-blowing for me. So that kind of stuff, I mean, I think you can now imagine how needed this break was.
Yeah, exactly. And well, one last thing about this, because obviously in the last couple of decades, the dance music EDM has really exploded. It's become really big, and there's so many artists these days. It's I suppose it can be very difficult to distinguish yourself from everything that's coming up. And with what you mentioned, the schedule, is there a sort of pressure to just keep going, to keep releasing something at least every couple of months because somebody's behind you willing to take your place in a way?
It's not really about the place, I think, and I wouldn't really mind it, because there are always like very new talents coming up every day. But it's more like the whole industry has changed. So Spotify, for example, has changed the music world in general as well. Because, for example, like years ago, people were releasing 2, 3, 4 big songs in a year, and that was enough. But if you're releasing a song now, like on Friday, like the week after, people are texting you like, hey, when is new music coming? Because they're used to this. Yeah, also, it's also like a roller coaster of new music. I mean, I heard there are, I think, 500,000 songs coming out every week on Spotify.
It's crazy.
That's insane. And yeah, I mean, nowadays, like all the labels, they are trying to push you to release a song every 6 weeks. But this is some kind of pressure, which is weird. And I think that also, tells a lot about the quality of the music, because I have the feeling that people are releasing songs to release songs, not to really, they want to keep that going, you know? They don't really care anymore about how the song is. They just rather want to have a song out. It's strange. That stresses me out a little bit, but I try to not care too much about it, because otherwise the quality of the music is just not getting better, and this is not really what I want to.
Yeah, let's talk about the music and the quality of it then, because for instance, one song that I really enjoyed was Underwater. So I'm just going to ask you about that song.
Amazing.
What was the starting point of that song?
The starting point was very nice and very natural, and that happens not a lot, because most of the time I'm sitting in front of an empty project and trying to find an idea like, okay, where am I going to start? But this time it was in the first lockdown back in May 2020, and I met with 2 friends of mine, and one guy was playing the guitar. That's also the singer of the song. And he said, hey, I have this cool idea, listen to that. And he was singing the song like, you pull me with your eyes underwater. And I was like, holy shit, that's so sick. Let's just turn the guitar into something else. And then I went back to the computer, and then we recorded the brass sounds. It was just everything on the computer. And then we were just sitting together. It was very easy. And the whole song started within like 15 minutes. And then we had the main idea. 1 hour later, the first demo was done, and it was very, very natural. Sometimes it takes 3 months to finish a song. And this time it was just like an hour, let's say. Really nice. And what's also special about this song is that that's the first release on, let's say, an own label. So not with a big major label in the background. And I'm very happy, because this is like one of the most streamed songs for me now, like every day.
Sure.
And this is just me and 2 friends making music, nothing big in the background, and that makes me very proud. I'm happy that you mentioned this song actually.
No, but it's interesting, because we just talked about kind of the pressure, and when you have your own label, you get to kind of make the decisions yourself, and that must be a very freeing feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Do you need to be in a certain, because you mentioned a song like this kind of comes together in an hour or just happens to come together, but some take a long time. Do you need to be in a certain mood or a certain mindset when you are working, or can it be any time of day?
No, some people can do it anytime. I can't. So some people, I heard about people, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard about people producing a song on a flight from Amsterdam to LA.
Sure.
I cannot imagine doing that because I would be too distracted. I really need, my favorite place is my own studio. I mean, I have my setup here. I could produce a song here, and I think I can prepare something like a demo. But like the finishing touches, I really like to have like at least a day just for myself, no phone. I leave my phone outside the studio and just me and my computer. And then I think this is like the perfect combination, because otherwise you're like distracted the whole time, and that's not good for creativity.
One other song I wanted to talk to you about was Clap Your Hands, because I read somewhere that this is the mindset behind this was kind of, okay, lockdowns are now over. I want something people can dance to. I want a banger. Is that
Yes.
right? Is that?
Yeah, it was like that. Actually, the song was done in 2019 already.
Okay.
Yeah, so the song was done back then, or the main idea. But then, like when COVID happened, we stopped the release date and we said, okay, I think this would be not working nowadays because you really need those festivals. So for us, it was perfect to release it when COVID was, I mean, it's not over, of course not, but we are finally back on some festivals, and I played like huge festivals like Tomorrowland last week, for example. And this is the perfect song for me to play on big stages. So it was kind of planned to have a song like that, but yeah, luckily it was there already before COVID.
And with songs like these, because there's so many ways, obviously, to approach a song, is it difficult for you to decide, okay, now I'm going to do, or kind of even knowing when a song is finished? Because you can always add something or take something away. So is that a difficult thing to figure out?
You mean if I choose the direction of the song?
Well, yeah, not only the direction, but just all the kind of the mixing as well, all the kind of little things, because you can always add a little sound here or there, or a little drum here or there. So
I can try to explain a little bit how I work, because I think that then you
Sure.
will understand it a little bit better. So what we normally do, and that's the example with Underwater as well. It's just like it's a stripped down version. So that means most of the time it's a guitar or a piano and a vocal. And the good thing later on, then you have the main idea, you recorded the vocal and you have the chords. And then you can decide, am I going the festival direction or am I going the Spotify kind of radio direction? Because I think if you have the vocal is the main part. But we have, for example, there are many demos I've done, and then I just flipped it later because I was like, hey, maybe I can try to do it more the festival direction. Or when it was a festival song, I just took the a cappella and then I turned it into something totally different. And I think that's the beauty of it, that you can just change it the way you want, and even last minute. So when, for example, I had a demo a few weeks ago for a big festival song, and I thought it was very cool. I sent it to the label and they said, hey, did you ever think about this could be also like a very radio friendly song if you just remove some like bigger elements? And I did it and it was great. So it's now a festival song turned into a radio song with just a few clicks. And I think that's the beauty of the whole process. And
I hear this a lot with musicians from all kinds of genres, where they say if you strip it down completely and it still holds up as a song, that means it's good.
Exactly. I was about to say that as well. Exactly, because it doesn't like. I mean, you know it from all the movies and everything. It just needs a guitar and a good vocal, and the whole magic is done. So whatever you add, for me, it also feels like. Less elements are more in music, because it's easy to put a lot of stuff in it. But if it's like a simple, I mean, Underwater is also very simple. It's just a brass, a few drums, and a cool vocal. So less is more sometimes.
So that's an interesting thought, because is that good advice to young producers then? Where I can imagine if you just start arriving in the EDM scene, then you just want to do everything, right? Or you hear something that is popular and you just try to do everything. So is that kind of the advice you would give? Like, calm down, you'll be fine. Just take it easy.
You can really tell when young producers, sometimes they try too much. So sometimes let's say a song is 4 minutes and it has like 2 breaks and a drop and something else, like a bridge part in between. And sometimes there's happening so much stuff in the song that I'm like, hey, this sounds more like an album preview or something like that, because it's just, it's too much of like they try to put everything, like every element into it. And it's, sometimes less is more. And especially with music, I believe.
Fair enough. Final question then. I read somewhere that a new collaboration with Steve Aoki and Dimitri is in the works. What can you tell me? Is there anything you can tell me about that collaboration?
Yes, actually, it's going to be a cover song.
Okay.
But it has like a lot of, I mean, I've done a collaboration with both of them already. Sure. So with Steve Aoki and also with Dimi and Mike. And you can really tell when you hear it, okay, that's the 3 guys or the 4 guys together. It's gonna be a huge festival song, and I played it a couple of times. So for all the guys who are watching now, they can go to some sites and check out my sets, and they might recognize it and find it. But it works really well on the dance floor, and I'm super happy that it comes out very soon. I think it comes out in October. I just got a mail, but it's not 100% sure, but somewhere around that time.
Well, we'll have to wait a little bit then, and if we really want to hear, like you say, we just go through the live set and maybe we'll find it. Tujamo, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. It was very nice. Thank you.